There once lived a young girl named Gertrude. She lived with her mother, a single mom named Dinah, and her older half-sister, Emily, in a peaceful little home. Dinah was a caterer, hardworking, kind, and content with her modest life. She didn't have much, but her home was full of love and laughter. Her older daughter, Emily, was a beautiful girl who loved God deeply. Their little family might not have been wealthy, but it was rich with peace. But Gertrude's life was split between two homes. Sometimes she lived with her mother, Dinah. Other times she stayed with her father, Brian, who had remarried. His new wife was named Jasmine. Jasmine was charming, elegant, and breathtakingly beautiful. She treated Gertrude with such affection that the young girl couldn't help but adore her. She loved spending time with her, loved how sweet and graceful she seemed. Whenever Gertrude stayed with her mother, she missed her stepmother. She missed her laughter, her perfume, her gentle voice. Jasmine had drawn her in with kindness, and Gertrude felt safe around her, at least at first. Whenever Gertrude visited her father's house, Jasmine would lovingly guide her to help around the home, washing, cooking, cleaning. But Gertrude didn't mind. She did it gladly because she loved her stepmother. Until one day, everything changed. When Gertrude turned old enough for senior high school, her father decided she should come and live with him permanently before going off to boarding school. That was when her woes began. At first, everything seemed normal, but soon, her father grew closer to her, and Jasmine began to notice. The warmth in her smile slowly turned cold. The affection became irritation. And before long, the mistreatment began. She would snap at Gertrude for the smallest mistakes.
Look what you've done!
She would pile chores upon chores on her. No matter how hard the girl worked, Jasmine was never satisfied. Every morning, Gertrude would wake up before dawn to bathe her little half-sisters, Jasmine's children, change their diapers, clean up after them, wash their clothes, feed them, and tidy the house before sunrise. She worked like a maid, and yet never once did Jasmine say, "Thank you." When Gertrude made even a tiny mistake, Jasmine would scream at her, calling her lazy, ungrateful, or useless. Each insult pierced like a blade, and every night, Gertrude would cry herself to sleep, her pillow wet with tears. One afternoon, she couldn't take it anymore. She called her mother, her voice trembling, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, I'm tired," she sobbed. "I can't do this anymore." Dinah's heart broke hearing her daughter cry. She wanted to go and bring her home immediately, but she knew Brian, Gertrude's father, loved his daughter and wanted her close. A few days later, Gertrude gathered her courage and spoke to her father. "Daddy," she said softly, her voice shaking, "I'm not happy here. I want to go back to Mommy's house." Her father froze. He looked at his daughter's tear-stained face, and his heart sank. He pulled her into his arms, tears filling his own eyes. "My daughter," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry for what you're going through. Please, stay with me. Don't go. I'll make things better, I promise." But the truth was, he couldn't. Jasmine's jealousy grew darker. She began to accuse Gertrude falsely, claiming she was lazy or disobedient. Sometimes she would even complain to Brian about things Gertrude hadn't done. The tension in the house thickened. Gertrude moved like a shadow, quiet, fearful, and heartbroken. Saturday mornings were the hardest. Whenever Jasmine cooked, Gertrude had to wake up before everyone else to help in the kitchen. She was always tense, afraid of making the smallest mistake. If she cut the onions wrong, Jasmine would shout. If she spilled water, Jasmine would scream. Even her breathing seemed to irritate her stepmother. Gertrude lived every day walking on eggshells. Then came the day of Elisa's sickness, Jasmine's youngest daughter. One afternoon, little Elise fell ill with a high fever. Gertrude called Jasmine at her office, voice shaking with worry. "Ma, Elise is burning up. She can't even stand," she said. Jasmine panicked. She rushed home, packed her things, and without saying a word, barked at Gertrude. "What are you still doing there? Hurry up! Come with me!" Gertrude slipped on her slippers and ran after her. They jumped into a taxi and rushed to the hospital. At the hospital, Jasmine was restless and frustrated. She poured her anger on Gertrude, scolding her for things that weren't her fault. Gertrude stayed quiet, holding Elise's little hand as the child cried from the fever. That night, they slept at the hospital. Gertrude barely slept. Every move she made drew another harsh word. Finally, Elise was discharged the next morning. It was just malaria. When they returned home, Jasmine stayed a few days to care for her daughter, and in those days, Gertrude suffered even more. The constant shouting, the endless chores, the silence from her father. But through it all, she endured. Because deep inside, even in her pain, Gertrude believed that one day God would see her tears. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't in fighting back, but enduring quietly, trusting that one day heaven will speak for you. Then came the letter. Gertrude's admission results had arrived. She had gained admission to one of the top senior high schools. She could hardly believe it. She packed her things with trembling excitement, said goodbye to her mother over the phone, hugged her little sister, and turned to her stepmother with a small, polite smile. Jasmine only nodded. Her father, Brian, drove her to the school himself. He was so proud. As they drove, Gertrude stared out the window, her heart full of hope. Maybe this was where her new life would begin. When she got to school, the world suddenly felt brighter. She met new friends, warm, cheerful girls who became like sisters to her. They laughed together, studied together, told stories late into the night. For the first time in a long time, Gertrude felt free. There were no harsh words, no shouting, just peace, just joy. But vacations were different. Every time she returned home, the warmth she'd found in school vanished. Jasmine's hostility worsened. The shouting became louder, the chores heavier. It was as if every smile Gertrude brought home from school annoyed her stepmother. And so, term after term, semester after semester, Gertrude endured. When she was in school, she flourished. When she came home, she faded. Still, she pressed on. Finally, after years of struggle, Gertrude completed senior high school. She waited anxiously for her university admission. And then, the day came. She had been admitted to the University of Ghana. She was ecstatic. Tears of joy filled her eyes as she packed her things again. She called her mother. Dinah cried tears of pride over the phone. Gertrude said her goodbyes, and her father once again drove her to campus. This time, something in her heart whispered, "You're about to find yourself." University life was a new world. Her hostel became her sanctuary. She and her roommate decorated their small room with flowers, scriptures, and laughter. They cooked together, shared stories, and encouraged each other through the long nights of study. For once, Gertrude felt at home. But deep down, there was a longing, a quiet ache for love.
She tried to fill that emptiness the only way she knew how, by searching for it in people, in whispered promises, in the wrong relationships. One heartbreak led to another. Each time she felt emptier than before, and slowly the pain began to affect her studies. Her grades slipped, her focus blurred. She felt lost until one night, everything changed. A friend invited her to a campus fellowship. The room was filled with songs of worship, hands lifted high and hearts surrendered in prayer. And in that moment, Gertrude broke down. Tears flowed freely. She didn't care who saw her. For the first time in her life, she felt loved. A love so deep, so pure, so unconditional. The kind of love only Jesus Christ could give. That night, she surrendered completely, and something inside her shifted. The heaviness lifted, the loneliness faded, and her heart was filled with peace she had never known before. Gertrude began to glow, not with makeup or laughter, but with the quiet light of grace. She walked with confidence. She smiled from her spirit. She was finally free.
In her final year, she studied harder than ever. Her grades improved, and when she finally received her results, she smiled through tears. She had completed her degree with an average GPA. It wasn't perfect, but it was redemption, because to her, the victory wasn't in the grades. It was in the transformation. By the time Gertrude completed school, her stepmother had stopped talking to her altogether. She didn't know why. Each time she came home, she would greet her softly, "Good afternoon, Ma." But Jasmine would look away, her lips pressed tightly together, pretending not to hear. Days turned into weeks, and silence became the loudest sound in that house. Eventually, Gertrude stopped greeting. She withdrew quietly to her small corner, holding on to her prayers instead of conversations. Then one day, her father, Brian, called for a family meeting. He had had enough. He invited his mother, Gertrude's grandmother, and Jasmine's mother. When everyone gathered, the tension was thick. Brian's voice trembled as he spoke. "I can't take this anymore. My wife has mistreated my daughter for too long. I've seen her cry, and it breaks me." The room went silent. Jasmine sat still, her expression cold. When they asked Gertrude to speak, Jasmine sneered, "Go on, talk. You said you couldn't talk, right? Talk!" Her voice was sharp, daring, cruel. But this time, something rose inside Gertrude. Courage. With tears in her eyes, she began to speak. She told her story from beginning to end. The insults, the chores, the loneliness, the endless shouting. Every word was truth. And when she finished, the room fell still. No one could deny it. Her grandmother wept. Her uncles shook their heads. The truth had finally been spoken aloud. A second meeting was held. There were arguments, tears, raised voices, but finally, peace was declared. Jasmine was told to watch her words. Gertrude was told to keep greeting her, and she did, with grace, even when it wasn't returned. Not long after, Gertrude's life began to shift. She got her first job, a position in a reputable organization. She started earning her own money, and for the first time, she felt a sense of freedom. She could buy her own clothes, give back to her mother, and stand on her own feet. And the one place she found true peace was church. Every prayer meeting, every worship night, she was there. Her heart found rest in God's presence. One day, her church announced a camp meeting for university graduates. Gertrude attended, and that was where her life changed forever.
During one powerful night of prayer, as worship filled the air, Gertrude lifted her hands in surrender. Tears streamed down her face, and then she felt it. A warmth, a peace, a presence so overwhelming it took her breath away. She began to speak in tongues. She saw visions of Jesus. She was filled with the Holy Spirit. From that night on, Gertrude was transformed. She was no longer broken. She was no longer the girl who cried alone. She became a woman of strength, faith, and fire. Every pain she'd endured had become fuel for her prayers. Every insult had become a testimony in the making.
Then came George, a kind, humble young man who loved Jesus deeply. Their paths crossed after service one Sunday, and their conversation flowed like they'd known each other forever. Minutes turned into hours, laughter and to comfort. Their spirits simply clicked. George began to call her, visit her, and pray with her. They grew closer, but Gertrude was careful. She prayed, "Lord, is he the one?" And the Holy Spirit whispered, "Yes." Still, she asked her pastor to pray about it. When he returned, he smiled and said, "God gives you the choice, but he's a good man." So she said yes, and love blossomed. Months later, George proposed. When Gertrude introduced him to her father, Brian's eyes filled with emotion. He held her hands and said softly, "My daughter, I'm proud of you. You've grown into a beautiful, wise woman." Her tears filled Gertrude's eyes. Her heart was full, not just with love, but with gratitude. Then came the wedding day. The morning sun was golden. The air was filled with laughter, the scent of roses and perfume swirling through the house. Gertrude sat before her mirror in her white gown, radiant as light itself. Her mother, Dinah, stood behind her, eyes glistening with tears. She placed her hands on Gertrude's shoulders and whispered, "My child, I am so proud of the woman you've become." Dinah bowed her head, praying softly, "May God go with you. May he bless your home. May his peace never leave you." Then she gently lifted the veil and covered her daughter's face, sealing her with a mother's blessing. Moments later, Emily, Gertrude's older sister, entered the room, smiling wide, her eyes full of joy. She had flown in all the way from Holland, where she'd been living for years. She hugged her sister tightly. Both women cried, overwhelmed by love and pride. As the church bells rang, Gertrude's father, Brian, took her hand and walked her down the aisle. He looked at her, tears glimmering in his eyes, and whispered, "My little girl, you've become everything I prayed for." Gertrude smiled through her veil, her heart full. The church glowed with light. The air was thick with joy and worship. Every guest stood as the choir sang, "Great is thy faithfulness." At the altar, George stood waiting, handsome, steady, smiling with love and reverence. When their eyes met, it was as if heaven itself paused to watch. They exchanged vows. They sealed them with a kiss, and the congregation erupted in cheers and applause. Her mother wept, her father clapped, her sister laughed through tears of joy. And in the corner, Jasmine sat silently. Her eyes darted around the grand church hall. She looked at the overflowing guests, the ministers, the family, the friends, the love filling every seat. She was stunned. She had never imagined Gertrude's wedding would be this glorious, this classy. The decorations, the music, the joy, everything radiated grace. She watched the girl she once called lazy, useless, and small, now standing as a queen before all. And she couldn't believe it. Later that evening, Gertrude returned home one last time to pack her things. She looked around the house. The walls that once echoed with pain now felt quiet. She said her goodbyes, but this time there were no tears. She was leaving behind her sorrow, her shame, her scars, and stepping into a home built on peace, laughter, and love. Gertrude and George's home became a haven. Every evening, George would come home with chocolates because he knew she loved them. Sometimes flowers, sometimes quiet dinner dates. Always love. Their home overflowed with laughter, prayer, and the presence of God. And soon, the sound of children's laughter filled the air, joyful, innocent, pure. When Gertrude gave her life to Jesus, she found peace right in the middle of the storm. Sometimes God won't stop the storm. He'll walk with you through it. But hear this, the storm was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to make you stronger.
Don't keep this story to yourself. Share it with someone who needs hope, someone who needs Jesus, and someone walking through a storm. Let the light that lifted Gertrude lift them too. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that inspire faith and healing.